Oh, welcome. Right this way, Mr. King. The doctor will be in for you momentarily. Ah, Lee, it's nice seeing you. Please have a seat. So, how have you been feeling lately?
The usual.
And what is the usual?
I decided to split up all of my possessions between my 3 daughters. Good idea, right? Well, ended up disowning one in the process, and then the other 2 kicked me out of the house. And I found myself slowly going mad and pulling out my hair, throwing it into the wind in the middle of the pouring rain, whilst yelling things that make no sense at all.
I see. And why did you decide to split up your possessions?
I just had a talk with my friend William.
William? You've never mentioned this William person before. Who is he?
In the small town of Stratford-upon-Avon, a baby boy was born unto John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. They named their son William, and he went on to be one of the greatest playwrights and writers in history. Although Shakespeare's exact birth date cannot be determined, it is considered that he was born April 23rd, 1564, and was baptized 3 days later. Shakespeare was John and Mary's oldest surviving child. Later on, he became the brother to 5 younger siblings, including Gilbert, Richard, Edmund, Anne, and Joan. William's father was a local glove maker, and he specialized in soft white leather. It was assumed that John was illiterate, and it was Mary who taught William to read and write. As a child, William attended Stratford's grammar school up until the age of 15. While attending school, William took classes that had an emphasis in Latin. Soon after William stopped attending grammar school, he married his sweetheart, Anne Hathaway. Their relationship was considered a little bit scandalous, however, because William was only 18 years old, whereas Anne was 26. At the time of their marriage, Anne was also pregnant. 5 months later, Anne gave birth to their eldest daughter, Susanna. 3 years later, in 1585, Anne gave birth to a set of twins, Judith and Hamnet, although later on Hamnet died due to the plague. Shortly after their birth, William left to join an acting troupe in London.
From 1585 to 1592, there are no records of William's life. This time period is often referred to as the lost years. Many people have speculated that during this time period he wrote the tragedy Henry VI. In 1592, William re-emerged into the public eye as a recognized actor and playwright. Later in his life, he became associated with an acting troupe called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, who were later renamed the King's Men. For many years, they performed in the Globe Theatre under a lease. However, as the renewal of their lease came about, dispute between the parties erupted. 2 years later, in 1597, the men took matters into their own hands and leased a plot of land near the Rose, a rival theatre. Then the men dismantled the Globe Theatre and carried across the river onto their leased land, where it was rebuilt. Later, Shakespeare bought a share of the theatre along with 4 other actors. In 1597, William used his newfound fame to buy the second largest house in Stratford, called New Place. In April of 1616, William Shakespeare died on his birthday. He was buried in Stratford at the chancel of the Holy Trinity Church and received a strange epitaph upon his tomb. Throughout the course of William's life, he wrote 37 tragedies. It can be considered that one of the greatest tragedies he wrote was King Lear. Although an exact date cannot be determined, it is assumed that King Lear was written sometime between 1605 and 1606, about 8 years before the Globe Theatre burned down in 1613. Historical records have shown that this tragedy was performed on Christmas Day of 1606 as part of the festivities. Shakespeare based King Lear off of the legend of the Lear of Britain. Lear of Britain was a king who ruled over Britain for over 60 years and was considered to be the last ruling descendant of Brutus of Troy. Shakespeare's story of King Lear follows the original history of King Lear very closely, adding just a few of his own aspects to the story.
In King Lear is the ruler of Britain. He is aging and has decided that he must split his land between his 3 daughters, Cordelia, Regan, and Goneril. Cordelia is the youngest daughter of King Lear and his favorite daughter. Regan and Goneril, on the other hand, are considered conniving liars and cause great pandemonium throughout the kingdom. When King Lear decides to split up his kingdom, Goneril and Regan lie about the quantity of their love for their father, just to gain his favor. In return, he grants them both large portions of the kingdom. Sadly, when his favorite daughter, Cordelia, cannot find the words to describe her real love for her father, the king gives her no portion of the kingdom. In fact, the old king is so outraged that he disowns her completely, and she is cast off and marries the King of France. Later, Kent, the king's close advisor, tells him that he has made a huge mistake. Unwilling to accept the wise honesty, the king turns his hatred towards Kent and banishes him from the kingdom too. The loyal Kent leaves, but later returns in disguise to help bring the king back to sanity. Lear decided to stay with Goneril because he believes that she loves him, but he later realizes that him and his guards are not welcome. Goneril and her servants purposely treat him as bad as possible so that he might leave. Due to her aggressive behavior and his earlier heartbreak from Cordelia, he begins to go crazy and decides to move in with his middle child, Regan. Upon his arrival, he finds out that Regan has left, so she did not have to deal with her father. Lear is devastated and is driven into further madness.
The other prominent family tragedy occurs between Gloucester, or the Earl of Gloucester, and his offspring. Gloucester is a powerful and loyal lord in King Lear's court, who faces a similar situation as Lear. He is tricked by Edmund, his illegitimate child, to distrust Edgar, his real son. Edmund, the scheming and dishonest spawn of Gloucester's affair, plans to turn his father against his brother Edgar, so that he may inherit all of his father's valuables. In the beginning of the play, Edgar is clueless and trusting of his brother. To trick Gloucester, Edmund constructs a letter in the form of Edgar's writing, stating that he wanted to kill his father. Edmund delivers the letter to Gloucester, and Edgar is forced into hiding. Out on his own, Edgar takes on the disguise of a poor crazy beggar named Poor Tom.
Back at the palace, Goneril and Regan kick out their father in the middle of a horrid storm. Having gone completely mad, he runs out into the rainstorm and screams at the winds whilst pulling his hair from his scalp. Gloucester finds Lear in this manic state and encourages him to come out of the rain. After a long night, Gloucester returns to his home and is imprisoned by Regan. Edmund has ratted out his father, stating that he assisted the king and needed to be punished. As punishment, Gloucester is blinded and banished. Gloucester, assisted by Poor Tom, who is actually Edgar in disguise, travels to the top of a cliff where he tries to commit suicide. Unknowingly, Edgar has deceived Gloucester and made him believe that he actually jumped off of a cliff. He then changes character and exclaims that no one should have been able to survive a jump like that. Edgar hath breathed purpose back into Gloucester. Then they are soon discovered by Lear. We will be performing a very defining moment in Act 4, Scene 6 of King Lear, where King Lear, who has seemingly lost his mind, talks to the blind Gloucester about how the difference between the wrongdoer and the justifier is nothing.
What art thou, mad? A man may see how this world goes with no eyes. Look with thine ears. See how yon justice rails upon yon simple thief. Hearken thine ears. Change places in handy-dandy. Vice is the justice, which is the thief. Thou hast seen a farmer's dog bark at a beggar.
Aye, sir.
And the creature run from the cur. There might behold the great image of authority. A dog obeyed in office, the rascal beetle, holy thy bloody hand. Why dost thou lash, whore? Strip thine own back, thou holy lust to use her, that kind for which thou whipst her. The usurer hangs the cozener, thou tattered clothes, great vices do appear. Robes and furred gowns hide all, plates sin with gold, and the strong lance of justice, hurtless broke. Armor and rags, a pygmy straw does pierce it. None does offend, none I say, none. All Abelum, take that of me, my friend, who have the power to seal the cursor's lips. Get thee glass eye, and like a scurvy politician, seem to see things that dost not.
Oh, matter and impertinency mixed, reason and madness.
If thou wilt weep my fortune, take thine eyes. I know thee well enough. Thy name is Gloucester. Thou must be patient. We came crying hither. Thou knowest the first time that we smelt the air, we wail and cry.
Alack, alack the day! Oh, here he is. Lay hand upon him. Sir, your most dear daughter.
No rescue? What, a prisoner? I am the natural fool of fortune. Use me well. You have your ransom. Let me have surgeons. I am cut to the brains.
You shall have anything.
No seconds, all myself. Why, this would make a man of salt to use his eyes for garden watering pots, I in lane autumn's dust.
Good sir.
I shall die bravely like a smug bridegroom. What, I will be jovial? I am king, my masters know you that.
You are a royal one, and we obey you.
Well, there is hope in it then. Come, and if you get it, you shall get it by running. Continuing our scene, Cordelia searches for her father and sends French troops to England to battle her sister's armies. Cordelia's soldiers bring Lear to her, but soon after, the French lose the battle and both Cordelia and Lear are taken prisoner. The traitorous Edmund, who is in possession of his father's title, has won the hearts of both Goneril and Regan. The two become enraged with each other and fight for his love. After the French lost, Gloucester and Edgar retreat to a safe place. There, Edgar decides to take off his disguise and reveal himself to his father. Joyous and broken-hearted, Gloucester dies. Edgar decides to take revenge upon his brother and returns to the castle to challenge Edmund. There, Edmund is wounded in the battle and slowly is dying.
Unable to win Edmund's love, Goneril poisons Regan and then kills herself. Kent removes his disguise and reveals himself. Angrily, he demands that Edmund reveal where the king and Cordelia are. Edmund confesses that the two have been sentenced to hang, so Kent sends guards to reach the king and Cordelia before tragedy strikes. Upon returning, Lear walks out carrying Cordelia's body in his arms. She has already been hung. Out of grief and anguish, the king expresses his agony of disowning his daughter out of foolishness. His broken heart is too much to bear, and the old king dies too. Kent and the Duke of Albany are then left to restore balance to the kingdom. Act 4, Scene 6 has a very important section of dialogue because it touches on the topic of rich versus poor. It is viewed that only the poor seem to be punished for petty crimes committed by both classes. In Lear's statement, he proclaims how everyone can be considered criminals because everybody has the same bad intentions. In addition, the rest of King Lear has many recurring themes. According to Harold Bloom, an accredited literature critic, King Lear's problems are very similar to our own. Bloom says, "The sorrows of generational strife are necessarily universal." He believes that Shakespeare incorporated these twisted family issues because everyone can relate to them in some degree.
The character of King Lear is also meant to portray the image of male authority becoming immobile. Although Lear is a powerful king and father, his daughters undermine his authority and rebuke any and all power that Lear once had. Throughout this tragedy, the plot was primarily dominated by female figures. Another recurring theme was that of betrayal. Lear's eldest daughters betrayed him even though they claimed they loved him. The same could be seen when Edmund lied to Gloucester, claiming that his love was greater for him than his brother's. Shakespeare repeatedly stresses the idea that love makes people blind.
Many experts have also related this tragedy to the common theme that you cannot have both love and fame. They believe that because Lear sought both, he lost all, and in turn was slowly driven into madness. Lastly, one of the most significant themes in the play was that of familial matters. As stated by Mitchell Ignatieff, a Canadian author and former academic politician, the play is about the intimate violence of family life. Time and time again, experts emphasize Shakespeare's reference to a troublesome family life. This leads them to be skeptical over the reasoning behind why Shakespeare chose this common theme. Although there is a lot of skepticism surrounding the tragedy, the overall view of the play was positive.
In our opinion, King Lear is an engaging read that entertains the entire time. Over the course of our high school career, we found that this was our personal favorite Shakespeare play to read. The other novels were more of a story being told in relation to certain groups of people, whereas King Lear offered many lessons and themes that were relatable to all types of people. In addition, we found some of his other plays to be quite dull or interminable. Overall, King Lear is a well-rounded tragedy that engages and teaches readers.
That's William for you.
I see. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have, but I do look forward to our next visit.